How's it going? Welcome back to Dylan Pickups blog. My name is Dylan, and I figured, you know, the weather's really nice. It's sunny for the first time in like 2 weeks, so I figured I would come home, sit on my back porch, and do this blog, you know, comfortably today and enjoy the weather. So this is part 3 of our setup, really being one of our keys to having good tone. And so today we're going to talk about the nut end of the guitar. In our blog about sound and how sound works, we talked about how on an electric guitar, the goal of an electric guitar is to keep the energy of the string between it within the tonal area, so from the nut to the saddles, and to really do that so that we can present a real accurate picture to the pickups. That's really what we're trying to do. Because the nut is the first point of contact on the peg head end of the guitar, of course that is going to have a humongous effect on our tone. How it's cut, how tall it is, those things really matter. And this is one area of the guitar that deserves attention. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can adjust out with your amp. There's a lot of stuff that you can mask with an overdrive pedal or effects or whatever, but man, spending some time and making sure that the nut is correct is really important. And there's going to be a lot of people, you know, that say, well, that's not how I do it, that's not what I would do. I'm just going to present a few conditions that happen and show you a couple of things to look for, and how you adjust, how you do these adjustments, whether you choose to do them yourself or you have a technician do them. And how you set it up is perfectly up to you, depending on how you play, but we're going to show you a couple of those variables. So I want to show you a couple of things that can happen with different styles of nuts. Okay, so the string really needs to come into the nut, and we're drawing the whole nut, we're looking at it from the side, and of course I'm drawing the line that the string would set on. Okay, now as this one comes in straight, has a nice hard angle, and then it has another angle as it exits the nut. That is a bad thing if we have two break angles here. A couple reasons. Friction, it's going to screw with your tuning a lot, and also it's going to mess with how the nut wears. Okay, because what'll happen, or what can happen, is we can have a condition where the corners wear off, in this case, and you end up with gaps here and here. So not only do you never want to have a nut with a gap on the leading edge from the fretboard side. So if this is the fretboard side on all of these drawings, we never want to have a gap here. The point of contact of the string, the main point of contact, needs to be right here, and it needs to have some attack angle to it. Okay, so that breakover angle needs to be there. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. But if we have a gap here, if we bear down on two different points and then the string goes across the middle, we can have wear on both sides. Okay, and there's a couple things that'll happen, and the main one, there's two main things that'll happen. If we have a gap right here where our string comes into our nut and it sits there, first of all, you can get like a sitar effect. It'll actually rattle, almost to the point of being a dead string. You know, you'll strum through your strings one at a time, and there will be one that feels deader or sounds deader than another. It could be because there's a gap right here, and it's just a dead string because of that gap. The other thing that can happen is now we have changed our scale length of our guitar. We have changed our scale length of our guitar from the end of this nut to the saddle to this gap over here to the saddle. All of a sudden that string doesn't intonate properly because it's longer than it used to be. So you never want to cut a nut this way, and you never want to have the nut wear this way. Okay, so one of the things that can cause this is if you cut a nut, and we won't worry about this side, but if you cut a nut and it's just a very sharp angle right there, that can wear down and it can cause that. You want to have a breakover angle to your nut, but there's got to be a little bit of material here for this thing to work with as the thing wears, because it will wear. As we talked about before, when we bend strings, it's sliding back and forth. When we use a tremolo, it's sliding back and forth. It is wearing over time. So we want to just make sure. But that's kind of the thing. You want to have a nice sharp angle here, but not enough to actually break the string over. You want to have it kind of slopes off to the peg head. Now, what should this angle be? There are many different theories on this, but basically what it really should do is match whatever string. Some people say, well, it should just match the peg head angle. That's one way of looking at it. But basically the idea is if our peg head, if our string is here, our post is here, whatever that angle of that string is going to follow that angle, and make it to where it breaks off nicely, comes over this way, and doesn't have any high spots in it so that it binds against it. Is this something that you're going to do yourself? You can try it. Get some fret, or get some nut files. There's a few different places on the internet that have good ones, and just try it. The only thing is taking your nut out of your guitar to put a new one in is a little bit of a pain, so you might want to read up on how to do that. But don't be afraid of doing this as long as you feel like you can get the nut in and out of the guitar. But this is one thing, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, go ahead and pay somebody to do it, because like I said, man, it is a key, big key to how our guitar sounds. What nut, if we're looking at the here. Alright, so now we're looking at the nut this way, right? From the end. So now, what shape should the groove be? There are also some different theories on this, okay? And there's a couple of different reasons for these theories. One of them says that you should have a round, basically to match the string, and that the string should sit no more than halfway in there, in that hole, okay? Then there's another one where it's like a V and the string sits in here like this. This is tough because that string, as it wears, can actually wear itself down into this V, and it'll actually move down. It'll actually fall closer to the fret, okay? So that's really not an optimal situation when you have a V like that. Now there are some guys that will take this concept like this, and they will kind of cut the bottom of it off so it's sort of a V, but then it's got kind of a round bottom on it. This is a cool way to cut down on string contact around the string, so that when you use a tremolo or if you bend a lot, that string can slide around in there and it's not contacting all the way around like this and having a lot of friction on it, okay? This theory right here is probably the most common. A lot of people say that you don't want your string to sit all the way down in your string groove. Nobody has ever told me why. It's in a bunch of books, and the biggest reason is for contact all the way around the string. You don't want that. But if you cut your groove correctly and you give it a little bit of room on top and it's not actually touching up there, then you go to some cool low alternate tunings, you do some stuff with tremolos, and the thing's not popping out of there. Now obviously I wouldn't put the string all the way down in there like that, but I'm just exaggerating. People say that you're not supposed to do that, and somebody's going to comment on this video and be like, well, this is why you're not supposed to. But man, in practical terms, I don't know why. I don't know why it needs to sit all the way up there like that. I know that the main reason is because they say that you're not supposed to have contact, but if you cut your nut slot right, it's a moot point anyway. So that could be a big source of conversation on the internet. I'm sure that we will talk about that some more. So that's why I'm glossing over it very quickly. So, let's talk about height. How tall should the nut be? How deep should the groove in the nut be? Here's our nut. Okay, we'll just draw this down here. Here's our groove going off to the peg head. Okay, string going off to the peg head. Here's our string coming this way, and here is our frets. What should the distance between the string and the fret be? That is 100% up to you, but there are some things you need to remember. When you pull down on a string to fret it, you change the shape of the string from straight to like this. The taller it is away from the fretboard, down at the lower notes, like up to the 5th fret or so, if it's really, really tall, there is a possibility that you could pull it out of tune just by playing it and have intonation problems at your lower frets. So, what should this distance be? What should this distance between the strings be? Remember that if it's really, really tall, away from the frets, that you can definitely have some intonation problems. So just keep that in mind, but you can set this really however you want. Or the other way to do it is to just measure from here to here, and one common measurement, like from Fender, is to do 20 thousandths between the fret and the string to start with. And depending on how you play, you can get it down to 15 or you can get it down to 10 if your frets are really, really flat. You can leave it up closer to 30 or 40 thousandths if you play slide or if you play really hard. You know, it just depends on your setup. Now that's all up to you, obviously. I got some people yesterday said, well, the author of the blog assumes that everybody wants really super low action. Most people do. Most people want to be able to fret the notes easily and not pull anything out of tune when they fret them. But there are some guys that want higher action for things like slide and for you know, there's some other reasons also. The reason you would measure, there's a couple different reasons you could do this differently. When you freehand a nut, you would put your fret file in here and you would move it over the top of the nut, cutting it down into the nut until you got this distance. Well, what you can do is you can measure the height of the nut plus add 5 or 10 thousandths, and then you can stack some feeler gauges right here. Actually, you would stack some feeler gauges, and then basically that cut down to when you hit the feeler gauge and you stop, and it pretty much works. So that's that. Nuts are really, really key. I know I just kind of blew through this, showed you some various ideas of how people do it. Some way that people cut nuts, the different heights, like I said, adding 5 or 10 thousandths to the total height right here from the fretboard to the string. You could do that. Or you can just measure from the top of the fret to the bottom of the string. Like I said though, this is one thing that's really, really super key. This angle right here, going off to the peg head, what this front edge looks like is a big, big deal. And of course the material of the nut. Lower priced guitars are going to have some cheap plastic in it, and they're going to sound dead compared to bone or tusk or some of the other higher priced synthetic materials. They all sound just a little bit different. Are you going to be able to tell a difference? You probably could. Don't read too much into it though. Bone is more durable than tusk because it's a little bit harder. Brass is not very durable, but it has its own kind of sound. Some people really hate it, some people really love it. I love it. Cheap plastic, it lasts okay, but it doesn't sound very good. Bone is probably the most popular that you can use, and you can cut that. You can literally go get a piece of cow bone and cut it out of it and put it in there. And there's all kind of videos on the internet about how to do that. So you could really try this whole experiment for free if you wanted to. Except for the fret files, they're not cheap. So knowing that this is 100% major deal to your tone, if you don't feel comfortable in messing with it, then send it off to somebody and have them do it. After your string height is set and your string height at the nut is set, and then the next thing is to dial in your intonation, and we will talk about that tomorrow. And that one is going to be an interesting one, and people are really scared of it, but don't be. we can figure it out. So thanks for joining me on my back porch today. This has been a really cool one. I know it's been quick. There's been a lot of material here, and but that's what we do. If you have any questions, if you want to add, if you have a question that you want us to answer or you want us to talk about, please let us know at DylanMcCurchie.com or on Facebook at Dylan Pickups, and we will add it. Thank you, and have a good day.